Howdy friends, this is Andy Hedges, and I'm happy to announce that my new album, The Westerner, released on March 27th and is available now anywhere you listen to music. The album was produced by my good friend Chris Ryden and the great Americana producer Rich Brotherton. I'm joined by some wonderful musicians, including special guests Dom Flemons and Ramblin' Jack Elliott. You can order CDs and vinyl from andyhedges.com. Thanks for listening. I'd like to start today's show with a story and a song from my good friend Bryn Hill. Bryn wrote a great song about today's guest, Benny Romero, and asked Bryn if he'd share a version of it with us and tell us how he came to write it. Here's Bryn Hill.
I wrote the song Benny about and in honor of my dear friend and one of my heroes, Benny Romero, Bridgeport, California. And I was fresh out of fighting cancer with my son Briggs, who was just fresh out of cancer treatment back in the early 2010s, and went over to Bridgeport and hauled my horse. I really just wanted to spend as much time as I could in those days on the back of a horse, and Benny had a group of guests over there a couple of days before the event, and we went on a ride up Buckeye, and I hauled a little pack mule with the wine and cheese on one side and my guitar on the other. We entertained those folks. Benny told stories, and I sang a few songs, and we just had the greatest of times, and I've made so many great memories with him through the years. He's always been a friend and a champion, always there when I needed him. And I honor Benny Romero with the song Benny.
Salt packing you skinny, son of the sea, tall in the saddle here beside you. Just a city boy from another day and age, awestruck with wonder as we ride through Sweetwater stories of Great Basin buckaroos. I'm lost in the tales that you tell. Life is a dusty trail you wouldn't always choose. A little bit of heaven and a little bit of hell. And Benny, can you take me to the top of the world? Eastern Sierras where the mountains and the sky come together forever like old friends in the wind. Benny, can you take me there? Don't get your lead rope caught beneath that horse's tail. Don't rein him up hard if you do. This is the canyon I remember so well, when I was a woolly buckaroo. My Basco father was New Mexican clean through, and he taught us horses all along. I love old Twister and number 7 too. Maybe you can put them in a song, and I sing, Benny, can you take me to the top of the world? Eastern Sierras where the mountains and the sky come together forever like old friends in the wind. Benny, can you take me there again? Benny, I don't understand the changing of the times. Why little boys get cancer, why the hell didn't mine? And Benny, I don't think I ever want to go back home. I want to ride here with you till this river turns to stone. Benny, can you take me to the top of the world? Eastern Sierras where the mountains and the sky come together forever like old friends in the wind. Benny, can you take me there? Benny, can you take me to the top of the world? Eastern Sierras, where the mountains and the sky come together forever like old friends in the wind. Benny, can you take me there again? Can you take me there again, Benny, to the top of the world?
Howdy, folks. This is Andy Hedges, and you're listening to Cowboy Crossroads. On each episode, I interview a different guest and ask them to share stories and discuss music, poetry, and culture from the working cowboy West and beyond. My guest today is Benny Romero. Benny was born and raised on a ranch in the high country of northern New Mexico. He eventually found his way to Nevada and California and managed the legendary Sweetwater Ranch. Along the way, Benny has served as the president of the Nevada Cattlemen's Association, helped to launch Range Magazine, chaired the Nevada State Board of Agriculture, and advised the Bureau of Land Management. Today, he owns and runs the Bridgeport Ranch Barns and Terrace, an event and concert venue in Bridgeport, California. I sat down with Benny at Bridgeport Ranch during the roe deer last summer and recorded this interview. Here's Benny Romero.
Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we had the ranch northern New Mexico, just north of Santa Fe, and that's where I was raised, right there. My dad worked at Los Alamos during the time that the bomb was being put together. He was an accountant for that. That's what he did. Anyway, I grew up right there in New Mexico, and our school was right close by, within walking distance for grade school. After grade school, I went to another little valley by the name of Peñasco, and that's where I attended high school, 4 years of high school there. During my 4 years of high school there, I was a basketball-playing son of a gun. I loved to play basketball. And my grades were not exactly the best, so Mom and Dad made me quit basketball, and I got into FFA, which was a good thing, Future Farmers of America. And I took off on that, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. I learned a lot from being in FFA, and I became the chapter president for quite a while. Then I went on to Las Cruces, to school, college, and I became state sentinel with Future Farmers of America. And it opened doors for me big time, a lot of things, especially in public speaking, because I used to be very shy about public speaking, and that opened some doors for me. But anyway, maybe a little bit more about my childhood. Dad not being there with the family, we had to take care of all the chores. And at the time, we didn't even have power. Power came when I was probably in the 6th grade, and I'd have to pump water with a hand pump into a tank, so we'd have running water in the house. And we had the ranch. And in the summertime, we'd cut hay out there. I had to irrigate the fields and irrigate the corn patch and so forth. Those were my duties. And bring in wood for the cook stove. And then cutting hay, that was a big thing for us. We cut the hay with a team of horses and then rake it and pile it up. And my uncle would come in with a baler, and we'd with a pitchfork put it into the hay baler. And me as a kid, I remember sitting on the back end of that baler where the bales are sliding out, and I'd sit there and it'd push me out, and a little game we played, So we grew up. When I say we, my older brother, myself, my younger sister, and my younger brother. We grew up right there on the ranch. All of us carried a slingshot in our hip pocket, and we were always shooting at something. Anyway, life on the ranch there, very, very kind of secluded, very, what would I call it? We were sheltered. I never went to a high school dance or anything because we were way off out in the country. So that's where I grew up. Lived with my grandmother part-time. She was up in here. She was in her 80s, and I stayed with her for quite a bit of the time. I'd sleep down there at her house, help her with water chores and stuff. And my grandfather, whom I'm named after, he was a very entrepreneur. He was a man to kind of give the name to the valley where our ranch is at, and he opened the first post office there. So the ranch that we had was part of the property that Grandpa put together, and he divided it amongst brothers and sisters. But it was good living. There was a ski resort 8 miles down the highway from our place, and I spent summers and winters as I was growing up there. In summertime, cutting timber. My job was dynamiting stumps, and in the wintertime, ski patrol, ran the lift, fit ski boots, put metal edges on skis. That was in the days with metal edges and so forth. That was at Sipapu Ski Resort, just northern New Mexico, south of Taos. It's a small ski resort. So anyway, I enjoyed skiing, fishing, horseback riding, and playing basketball was my favorite. Anytime we'd get a rainstorm in the afternoon, the flies all leave, and then when the sun would come back in late evening, that's when I go out there with my fishing pole and do some good catches, fishing out there. A stream came right through our property. I guess we can move on to more of my life after I left home, college down at Las Cruces, and then before I graduated, I came to Yerington, Nevada. I was looking for a job with Fish and Game, but at that time Vietnam veterans were coming out and they had preference, and so I didn't get the job that I was after. I went back to school for one more semester. Anyway, I worked heavy equipment for one summer, and then the boss, the owner, says, "Benny, can you come back next summer?" And I don't, yeah, sure. So I came back, and I worked running heavy equipment, hauling concrete all over the place, met all the ranchers. They all needed head gates on their irrigation systems, and so I did that for quite some time, and I got into driving semi-truck as well. One of the most memorable things that I did was had to haul a load of bentonite, which is used for drilling, to Area 51 down by Las Vegas. And went 60 miles back in there to a big, huge drill rig, 11-foot diameter bit. They were drilling a mile deep and then exploding bombs way down there. But anyway, that was very, very interesting, very impressive to see where they had dropped bombs before. It stuck in my mind for a long time to get to see some of that stuff. Ground that looked like glass, just they dropped them off towers. Everything's melted down. So I worked there for 6 years running heavy equipment and stuff, but I always wanted to get into home building. I thought that was pretty interesting, so I went to work for a contractor that built homes, and we built quite a few homes around the Yerington area, Yerington, Nevada. Built quite a few homes, including my own. I built up one down there. But we got hired on to build a big kind of a lodge at Sweetwater, at the Sweetwater Ranch, and it's just north of here about 25 miles. And we wound up building that big lodge, nice, big, beautiful home. So I dealt with the owner, whom was a corporate attorney in Beverly Hills. So in doing that, I got to knowing the owner. and we became friends. And he knew I had a ranching background, and so he owned the whole Sweetwater Ranch, where was properties scattered all over in Nevada and California. When I got done with the house building, he asked me if I was interested in running the ranch for him. And I thought about it, and I finally said yes, I would do it. So I wound up running the ranch for him, and including some of the farm ground, which I was not crazy about, but the cattle operation, and I did that. Then he passed away, and a man from New York by the name of Bill Weaver, he was one of the very first members of the CIA and the personal advisor to General Eisenhower. He had a seat on the stock market, Wall Street. So he buys the ranch, and he comes over to me and says, "You've been running the ranch for quite a long time." I said, "Yeah." He says, "You write the checks?" I told him, "Yeah." He says, "Any reason why we should change?" I told him, "It's up to you. You're the owner now." And he says, "No, you keep doing what you're doing." And I ran the ranch for him for quite a long time, until he calls me up one day and he says, "Benny, let's sell the ranch. Let's make $1 million." And I told him, "I got a buyer right now. If you're serious about selling." He says, "Yeah, let's sell it." So I sold it. And the people that bought it wanted me to stay there as well. They're home builders in Santa Cruz. So I ran the ranch for them, and they carried the note for quite a while until they couldn't finish paying it off. So they lost it back to Weaver from New York, and kept running it for him. And then he calls me back and says, "Hey, let's up the price and sell it again." So we upped the price, and I sold it for him again. And this time I sold it to some people, local people in Yarrington. They wanted me to stay on working for them, running the ranch. And I'd been on there 31 years. And I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to do something different. So that's when I started building the barns and terrace here. I came here, and I'm working on putting in the pavers and the rock wall, and spent a winter in here doing this, fixing this room all up. And I did all the pavers on that floor out there. The barn was built in 1871 by Kirkwood, a man by the name of Kirkwood, and he did all the hauling of hay, or providing hay, to the stables up at Bodie, at the old ghost town of Bodie. So he built the barn, and then a little later, I think he passed away, and his daughter continued to run the operation. But in the process of the selling of the ranch that I was doing for Weaver, at the last sale that we did, I told him, "I want this 4 acres and these 2 old barns." He says, "Well, you better say what you want now before we make the deal," he says. So I told him that. He said, "Well, you can have it." Nobody knew what I had in mind. And I'll tell you why I did what I did. Is that was my corral right there. And I was weaning cattle right where the terrace is at right now. I was always afraid that cows rubbing against that wall, they were going to tear it up. But I weaned a semi-truckload of calves, and as I'm turning that semi around, right next to the fence, the calves in the truck are bawling, and the cows are down here looking up at the truck, and all that going on. And I left with the calves, taking them to the feedlot. And as I'm on the road, I got to thinking, I'm going to change this from cows to people. I'm going to corral people down here. That's where my whole thing started about this, putting in the venue. And the more I thought about it, I went ahead, drew up some plants and stuff, and went to work on it. Very interesting part of it was I decided to put up this flagpole, and I asked the local ranchers in the area if they would donate to it. Not that I needed the donation. I just wanted them to have ownership to that flagpole. And they did. I think they all gave me $200 or something like that. And I have a plaque that names everybody that donated to it. So I built a patio, did the rock wall, and put up the flagpole. I went to the county to see if I needed a permit to put up the flagpole, and they said, oh yeah, I had to have the specs and everything, and I thought, oh, the heck with it. So I went to the Marine base, talked to the Marines out there, and asked them if they would come up and put this flagpole to fly an American flag there, and when do you want it up? We'll be there tomorrow. So they came out, put up the flagpole, and then I put on one big party. He invited a lot of people, about 300 people. And I asked the Marines to come and raise the flag for the very first time on that pole, and they did. And I had a girl singing the national anthem. And nobody knew about the third thing that I had lined up, and I had a P-51 airplane do a flyby right at the time that everything started. Everything was at 8 o'clock in the evening. And it was pretty impressive. That gave my place a name. Then I started doing beef and wine tastings. I did that for a while with some entertainment. Cheese and wine, chocolates and wine, and I worked with Costco. They came out here and presented their wines and their beef and stuff. And then gradually one wedding came along, and then another wedding, and then from there on it's been mostly weddings. But I do still do some concerts and events, different kinds of events. This is one of them that's taking place right now, the Cowgirl Rodeer. And then just at the end of August, I'll have Fishing Mission, which is a group of guys from Sacramento and Scottsdale, Arizona. They put this on every year right here. And they put on a dinner, dance, the whole ball of wax. And all the money they make goes back to stocking more trout in the streams and scholarships. So it's a good event. I help them out with that. And other than that, it's weddings. Right now I'm lined up till the end of September with weddings. So it keeps me busy. And I'm right here. I live right on the property. I like flowers, as you can tell. I have flowers everywhere, and I enjoy keeping the place looking sharp, nice. And in the meantime, when I was putting the pavers down, I had a bull get out of my property and wound up at the Honeywell Ranch. And Megan calls me up. Megan is one of the Honeywells. She calls me up. She says, Benny, one of your bulls is in with our cows, and we got them in the corral right now. Would you come and pick it up? And I said, sure, I'll come over and pick him up. So I went over and picked up the bull. And on my way out, she's taking a ride out with a bunch of guests. And she says, Benny, what are you doing right now? I told her, well, I'm working on my patio out there. She says, would you be able to come and help me for 1 week? I told her, sure. I don't know what I'd be doing, but I could come out and help you for a week. Well, the week hasn't ended, and it's been 22 years that I've been working for them until this summer. I was doing weddings here and working 5 days a week over there, which became too much of a load for me. So I'm now just working 1 day a week on Wednesdays, and that's the day that we take the rides up into the high country to the lakes and streams, and I know all the trails, so that's one of the reasons why I stayed on doing that. And I enjoy that. I really enjoy going up in the mountains and riding with him. But maybe I'm leaving a part out, and that's while I was doing all this and managing the Sweetwater Ranch and so forth, I had an old-timer by the name of Fred Dressler. They had the state grazing board. I knew nothing about the state grazing board, but I became interested, and I wondered, what do they do? So I went to one of the meetings, and Fred Dressler was there. He was a pretty prominent name around the area. He owned a big part here in Bridgeport. And he looks at me. He was in his 80s at the time. He says, Benny, what are you doing here? I just came to check and see what all goes on with a grazing board. So we talked for a little bit at lunchtime. And after lunch, when they got back on the meeting, all of a sudden he stands up. He says, I nominate Benny as chairman of the board. I didn't know what to say, He says, yeah, we need new blood. We need young blood. He said. He was a very stern man. And they voted me in, and I became chairman. And I was chairman for 19 years of the grazing board. And during that time is when I started Range Magazine. How I started Range Magazine is I was on a trip to New Mexico, and I was going across to Arizona, and I see this cowboy going out across the desert. He probably had 15 head of cows and a little blue dog behind him. And I got to thinking about him. So what does he have at home? A wife, maybe a young little baby, maybe an older little boy. What's his idea? What's his values and so forth? The more I thought about it, I thought, this story needs to be told about the ranching industry and people out there on the land and so forth. And I stopped at a gas station in Arizona, and I picked up Arizona Highways magazine, which is a very classic magazine. And I got to looking through that. And I thought, a magazine like this would be something that we could put together and tell the story of the ranching lifestyle and the values of the ranchers and good positive stories. So when I came back, we had a meeting coming up, and I presented the idea to the board and told them, could we do something like this? They said, Benny, if you lead it, we'll support you. So I put a group together, a little board together, and I talked to John Asquaga. I don't know if you've ever heard of John Asquaga. He owned the Nugget, big Twin Towers. I went to talk to him, see what he thought, because he had cattle here in Bridgeport, and big-time rancher. He says, Benny, yes, we need that. We need something like that, something to carry on our message. So I told him about what I thought about doing. He says, I can get you an editor. She's doing Silver and Blue magazine for Reno, for the college at Reno, UNR. Says, let's talk to her. So I called her up, and I told her about my idea and so forth, and she was very interested, and so she became the editor of Range Magazine. I hired her, and that was the birth of Range Magazine. C.J. Hadley. Yeah. So I did that. Then the next thing I know, I go to a cattlemen's meeting, I believe. State Board of Agriculture meeting. I went there, and the chairman was retiring. He had been there for 3 years or something like that. And they were asking if anybody'd volunteer to take the position, and I raised my hand and told them, I would like to do that. So I became chairman of the State Board of Agriculture, and then I couldn't get out. I was there for 5 years, which was great experience, real good experience. A lot of projects, water in eastern Nevada, water for Las Vegas, some of the topics we talked about, and baling of hay, weed-free hay, just a lot of different topics, sheep, cattle. And then I became chairman of the Cattlemen's Association, and I was there for 2 years. That was also a good project. I had to write something every month, a little short story about the Cattlemen's Association, what I did there, and what projects we had going, and so forth. And then I was invited to sit on the advisory board to the State Bureau of Land Management, and I did that for a while. While I was doing that, I get a call from Washington, D.C., in office of the White House. I was way out on the range, picking up old salt blocks, leftover salt, and bringing it back to the headquarters. And I was very proud of my box phone that I had in my truck. And it rings, and I answered, office of the White House. Benny, and this girl happened to know me, says, would you be interested in becoming Assistant Secretary of the Interior? And I told her, let me think about that. So I thought about it for quite a while. I had several conversations back and forth with them. And finally I said, no. I'd be willing to help And at the time, it was Gail Norton. She was the Secretary of Interior at that time. But I invited her to come out here, come to the West. And she came out, took her on some horseback rides and showed her the land, talked about things out here in the West and so forth. And I told her I'd be interested in helping you from out here in the West, but I don't want to move to D.C. I did stay in touch with her quite a little bit. And then that kind of floated away, went away, and we got another Secretary of Interior, and there was several of them. But then all of a sudden, the last Secretary of Interior, whom just left now that Trump came into office, from New Mexico, Native American, I can't think of her name right now. I get a letter from her asking me if I would be interested in taking, she'd heard and read about me, and so she asked me if I'd be interested in being her assistant. And I told her, yeah, I probably would. But I think where we really need the help is on the ground out here in the West, between the Bureau of Land Management and ranchers. My idea was getting everybody to work together, is what I tried to do. And I also, during that time, I put together the Rancher Agency Seminar. And I used the rancher first, and then agency, and invited all the agencies, Fish and Game, Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife. Everybody came to those meetings so that they could listen to the ranchers as to why they breed their cows when they do, so that it fits their program. If they have public land allotments, will they be calving at a certain time of the year and being able to be ready to turn out onto public lands, in branding, and what all takes place in that whole process of using public lands. So by putting this Rancher Agency Seminar together, I was very surprised everybody came to it. All the agencies came to it. We had some good conversations. The ranchers got their chance to tell their story and why they do what they do when they do it. So I was very, very progressive, and I've had people later on, including National Range Society for Range Management. They wanted me to do a talk on that, and I haven't done it yet. But why it's so important that the agencies know more about the ranching industry. A lot of the people in the agencies are college graduates, haven't really had the real experience. So that's what I was advocating, is that working together, being able to put things together. I've always thought that it'd be a win-win situation if we did things that way. I've been asked, Benny, let's do that again. You should lead this and do it again. I haven't. I'm now 80 years old, and I've kind of left. I've been chairman of so many things, including chairman of the advisory board to the Mono County supervisors. And so I've decided I've done enough, so I'm going to cut back, try to enjoy life from here on out, and go fishing and camping and skiing and so forth. I'm still riding horses. Lifestyle on the ranch. It was very interesting. I mean, worked hard, a lot of hard work. You know, I was a manager. I was the truck driver hauling cattle back and forth. Our allotments were east of here by about 70 miles. From here in Bridgeport, we had cattle here, corrals here, and we had cattle at Sweetwater. So in the fall, I'd be hauling cattle to the winter allotments, and then we'd calve out there. And then in the spring, I'd be hauling cattle back, pairs, cows and babies back to the summer pastures. But there was always something to do. If you really look at managing a ranch, you've got fences, barbed wire, you've got employees, you've got staff working for you, you've got irrigation, animal health, shoeing horses and mules, There's a lot more to it than people think. People see a bunch of cattle out on a pasture. They don't really realize, and we need to put this out maybe more, is they don't really realize what all goes on. It's actually a science, and everything has a timeline where you have to do certain things at certain time. It was hard work, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every bit of it, and the people I worked for they treated me very well. There for a while, from baling hay and weaning calves. Water was very important. Getting your irrigation done here in Bridgeport, Sweetwater, and then we turned around and bought. When Mr. Weaver took over the ranch, he says, "Benny, let's buy some more property." So we bought a ranch up north of Reno, Gerlach, way out in the middle of nowhere. Bought a ranch out there, raised garlic on it, but it had an allotment with it, so I ran cows up there. There for a while I was cows in Nevada, California, Oregon, and Hawaii, running everywhere, just busy time. But the part right here, having the headquarters right at Sweetwater, which it's a beautiful ranch. If you ever get a chance to go down that way, it's beautiful. It's got one great big barn that we built with a couple of turrets, one on each end. One of them was my office. The back one was my calving room. That's where I pulled calves. We calved all the heifers at the ranch. And that calving room was, if we had to pull a calf and put the cow and calf in the barn, keep them there until we're sure that they were paired up and the calf sucking and so forth. I also used it as my surgery room. I did quite a few C-sections in there. I had good lighting. I had hot water, concrete floor, drains, the whole works. Not too many ranches have that luxury to do that way, but I did. I also had helped deliver calves out on the desert, out on the range, a lot of miles on horseback. Up here we had an allotment, Forest Service allotment, that's up a canyon up here in the mountains. And I always used to use cowbells. I still have a bunch of the cowbells, and I do talk on cowbells over at the Honeywell Ranch. And it's like having extra cowboys out there with you, because I used to put them on a lead cow, and if you hear that bell ringing somewhere, you're probably going to find 20 cows. I really enjoyed running cattle in the forest. All the trails, water, and it's a clean life for cattle. So I did that, and running out on the desert in the wintertime, you always had to be on the lookout for storms moving in, and had to haul water in different locations, had to haul water. And I had wells. I put in a 13-mile pipeline of 1.5-inch PVC pipeline to scatter water. At every mile I had a water trough. We'd have to go out there and break ice in the wintertime. So that was life on the ranch there. My ex-wife used to help me, especially when I was doing C-sections. She'd be right there to help me clean the cow down and everything and do a C-section, hand me the tools and stuff. And it being at 6,600 feet, we got a lot of snow there. So we were always having to blade roads here and there, having to feed in the wintertime. I fed with a tractor and wagon, and sometimes with a dozer and wagon. But that was life on the ranch. It's a good life, good solid life, good home cooking, raising my daughter. My daughter grew up helping us there for quite some time, and then she went on to college, and she became a pharmaceutical sales girl. Is what she's doing today. That's what she does. So never got married. Too busy, just on the go all the time. So she had a lot of her growing up on the ranch. To me, young kids growing up on the ranch, you learn work ethics, to work hard, but it's a happy life, good home cooking. It's the best. It's a future for our country. If there was more of that, we'd be better off. When I do weddings here, I always, towards the end of the little speeches, people wishing them the best and talking about it, I have a little speech that I talk to them about, and I tell them, sometimes the waters are deep, the waters could be murky, the waters could be high, but never leave the boat. Stay on there. America needs good family, good couples today. We need that. Solid backgrounds. And I give them a glass of wine, or a glass with a Bridgeport Ranch emblem on it. And I give them a glass, and I tell them, come back in a year from now, sit down here at the terrace, have a glass of wine, and think about your first year of marriage, how things went, and then look to the future. So I do that. I've had a lot of thank yous from the public, the people attending the wedding, and how they think that's so affirmative, that good advice. So I've learned that myself in the 80 years that I've been around. Going back to let's go way back for just a minute. My dad was before he went to work at Los Alamos, he was a lookout man for the Forest Service. Lived up on the little cabin way up. In the time that he was there, one fall, I think, he got hired by Life magazine to take some photographers up into the high country lakes and so forth. And before they left, one of the Life magazine photographers took my picture, and I'm holding a rooster in my arms. I was probably like 6 years old. Next thing I know, I was on Life magazine. My picture was on there, but that's just a little short story. I remember Dad saying, they all wore cowboy boots. He says, walking around out there in camp in the woods, cowboy boots are not the thing to wear. My dad brought us up. He says, you're going to learn English and you're going to learn Spanish correct. He was very adamant about that. And I took a trip to Spain a few years ago, and there was a man that asked me, he says, Benny, he says, where are you from? And I told him, he says, how come you speak such correct Spanish? So my Spanish is correct? He says, yes, your Spanish is very correct. He says, our Spanish here in Spain, he says, they speak it so fast, and they throw in words there that don't mean anything, you know. So that was a big eye-opener for me, for somebody from Spain to tell me that I spoke correct Spanish. Like I say, we were raised very sheltered. Well, I think Dad had a lot to do with it to begin with. From the very beginning, had a lot to do with it. My love for taking care of the land has always been there. Seeing good practices on the land and so forth just always stuck to me. And I saw so much controversy between agencies and the ranchers, and I always thought, hey, we all love what we have, the ranching industry. People that come from the city, they love to see ranches and cattle out on the range. They don't know what it's all about, but they love seeing that. I've seen so many people come into this valley, just as they approach the valley and they look to the right and they see that big mountains and all the greenery and all the cattle out there, they stop to take a picture and they run in the ditch. So I'd have to go out there and pull them out, but so many of them. Anyway, it's just been in my blood, being raised on the ranch at home and so forth, taking care of the land for everybody. not just for the ranching industry, for everybody, and making it productive has always been a goal for me. Just seeing it, I've participated and worked with putting in conservation easements. I did one on the Sweetwater Ranch, started it. To see open space stay open and productive, it's outstanding to me. I became a member of the Society for Range Management, and I have a very good friend that if you were to visit with him, he'd be full of a lot of information of this kind. Him and I have been very close, and he owns a Resource Concepts in Carson City. He helps the ranching industry a lot and mitigate and do. Like he helped me put a whole grazing operation, what to do on the ranges to make sure that they're productive for you for the following year, and so on and so forth. A management practice, we worked on that for a long time, got it all finished and so forth. And not knowing that this was going to happen, I got all that done, took care of all that land out there on the range, public land. After I left the ranch, the Honeywells wound up owning those allotments. So here I am back out there, right in the same country, helping them gather cows and bringing them in, helping them brand, and so forth. So it's all rewarding. It's a big reward back. After this 80 years, it's a reward. It's something I love. I love to see it. It's been good. What I think right now is we need to reach out to more of our younger generations. There's a girl here right now, Melissa. She just graduated from UNR in rangeland ecology. And I told her, I got somebody that would probably hire you right now. I told John McLean, my friend in Carson City. So I introduced her to them. And he says, just what we need. However, government shutting down, they have not been able to put her to work on some of the government projects that they have going on. So I try to help youngsters. I write letters for them with all my background knowledge and the things that I've been chairman of. I can put them down at the bottom of my letter for them to get scholarships and so forth. Aspen Honeywell, they asked me if I'd write a letter for her, and I've known her since the day after she was born. So I wrote a real nice letter. She got $35,000 in scholarships, just like that, by using my letter. So I would be more than happy to help more kids like that, more youngsters. They can't call them kids, they're young adults, to help them get into our universities. One thing that I really think needs to be done, and I brought it up once before at our meeting with the university. They told us how much money we had in the kitty, and we had millions of dollars in the kitty. I told them, if we have this kind of money in the kitty, how come we can't reduce the tuition for students? When Biden was president, he was trying to help the colleges more and forgiving some of the tuitions for students. No, we need to work on the universities. They got money, lots of money. They need to reduce the tuition for kids. I mean, there's some projects going on there, and the instructors at the universities, they're doing very well. The whole campus is doing they're building big new gymnasiums to bring more athletes into the university, better athletes. Let's help this younger generation that are just trying to get into college. A family may have 2, 3. They got one in college, one more coming up, and they're having troubles putting food on the table. Let's help them out by reducing their tuition. When they come out of college with a debt that takes them half their lifetime to pay, It's not right. It's not right. There's other countries, they don't have to pay tuition to go to school. I think we need to work on that quite a bit. There's some opportunities out there to help. I do talks at Honeywell with all the guests that come there. And every Thursday night, I've got something to show them. I take an ice saw and a pair of tongs, and I tell them about my dad used to cut ice in the wintertime. First, I start out by telling them, did you have an ice cream cone on the 4th of July? They said, yeah, we had ice cream on the 4th of July. You know, back in the old times, the only way you could have ice cream is you had to store ice to be able to make ice cream. How'd you do that? You'd cut it in the wintertime with this saw right here and this pair of tongs, and you store it in a shed and put sawdust between the ice blocks so that they wouldn't stick together. And then in the summertime, you'd pull out a block of ice and you'd put it in the ice box. That's where the name came from, the old ice box. You'd put that block of ice up there, and that'd keep all your food cool. So that's something we don't realize today. You just put stuff in the refrigerator. But that's how they used to keep cool. Processing the beef at home on the ranch. We'd process the beef there. We never said slaughter the beef. We processed the beef. The longer you hang that beef in a cold room, the more tender it is. It's the enzymes that work on that meat and so forth. And then we used to make a lot of hamburger, but we did all our own beef right there at home, which people don't know where it's coming from today, you know. One other little short story about preserving corn. And you've seen they think it's all Indians that made them, but it wasn't. The Spanish people used to, the ovens with a little door in front and the little hole in the back, you'd get that red hot in there. Put a bunch of wood in there, get it red hot. Then you'd go out in the field and take all the corn off the plants, husks and all. We'd load up a pickup full, bring it in, throw it inside that oven after you pull all the ashes out. Throw it all inside that oven and throw buckets of water in there and throw the little hole up on top. Then seal the door and seal the hole on top, and it bake overnight. Pressure cooker's what it was, but a big batch of corn. Next day you take it all out, and we take all the husks off except for 3 husks. You'd leave 3 on there. Then Mom would braid them with the corn. You probably have seen this in New Mexico. Ears of corn sticking out, big long string of it, and they dry. You don't want them touching each other because they'll mold. So they air out and they shrink and they dry. Put them away. Then in the wintertime, we'd sit around a wash tub and take 2 ears of corn and rub them together, and all the kernels would fall off. But there would be some chaff that comes with the kernel from the ear of corn that would fall in with the corn. So then on the spring day when we had a little bit of a breeze, Dad would take it outside, spread a big tarp out on the ground, and he'd air it. He'd spill it off a bucket, and he'd land on that tarp, and all the chaff would fly off. So then you got dry, shrunk down corn. Then you put it in a cooker, and it swells back up, and then you can have it. Different ways of using corn like that. And it's got that special flavor because the flavor from the husks went into the kernel, and it's got a flavor of its own. And a way to preserve corn for winter use. So.
Did you grow up doing that?
Yep.
In New Mexico?
In New Mexico, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did that. I also have downstairs another little short story, and I can show them to you. Billy the Kid, you've heard of him in eastern New Mexico, and Pat Garrett and so on and so forth. But for a while Billy was on the run, He wound up in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and then he wound up in Mora, New Mexico. Then he came over the mountain and wound up on our property, pitched a tent underneath this big cedar tree. And the only reason I knew this is because there used to be a lady there, and she had to have been in her 80s at the time. She lived just down the street from us. I used to kind of be scared of her. She wore a long black dress and a black shawl all the time. Her name was Virginia Valdez. And I remember her telling the story about dancing with Billy the Kid. She says, I danced in that little old saloon with Billy the Kid several times. He says, and his teepee tent was under that cedar tree over there on your property. Huh. So one day, Dad's out there plowing with a single horse and a plow. And he went by that tree, and he rolls over the little brass corners of a little wooden box and 2 pistols that were buried there. I've got them downstairs. He had buried them there. I mean, who else would have buried pistols there? But that's where Billy the Kid camped, and it's a 44, and that's what he carried a lot of the time. That's probably a spare one or another one, or maybe one that didn't work or something. But we assumed that was his pistols. And I've got the plow. I always thought these 2 pistols and the plow should stay together. Even in our own little community there, every now and then I remember one time, I remember this clearly, because there was a saloon down the highway just a little ways. Middle of the night, a bunch of shooting going on out there. Somebody firing a pistol, and one man got wounded. And to me, that was very surprising, very, very different, And I've heard other stories. The Indians down the Pueblo, Dad he liked the Indians. He used to get along with the Indians really well, which was about 5-6 miles, maybe further, was the Picaris Indian Pueblo. And I remember Dad, every time we harvested the apples off the orchard, he'd always put 5 or 6 bushels off to the side. Then he'd take it down to the Indian people and give him apples. And I remember this one Indian, an old-timer, white hair, braids clear down to here. He'd come walking on weekends because he knew Dad was at home on weekends. He'd come up to see Dad, and he'd sit there on this little rock wall by our house, and Dad would be talking to him and telling him this and that and the other, and that Indian would just sit there, They don't say much, but he'd sit there and listen to Dad. And they were friends. And I remember a story that that Dad used to tell about Grandpa. My grandpa had the general store, and this man would come there and charge, I need kerosene, or I need a pair of shoes, or whatever, and he put them on a bill. And finally one day this man comes in and he says, Senor Romero, he says, I cannot pay you. I just don't have the money to pay that bill. And Grandpa put his arm around him and he says, I'd rather have your friendship than your money. That was it. And a handshake was always a contract in those days,
All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Benny Romero for taking the time to visit with me. You can find out more about Benny's Bridgeport Ranch Barns and Terrace at bridgeportranch.com. I'd like to thank Hal Cannon for playing the Cowboy Crossroads theme music. You can find out more about Hal at halcannon.com. I'd like to thank my Trail Boss patrons Bob Kelly, Chris Ryden, Scott Anderson, Paige Marie Polis, Gabe Rosen, and Helen DeZio. If you're enjoying Cowboy Crossroads and would like to help me keep it going, you can become a patron at patreon.com/cowboycrossroads. That's patreon.com/Cowboy Crossroads. You can also make a donation on my website at andyhedges.com. If you'd like to contact me with a question or a comment or a story, I'd love to hear from you. Send an email to andy@andyhedges.com. Thank you for listening to Cowboy Crossroads.